Hello and welcome to the Libri Labra Book Club. I am joined today with my husband, John, aka BookTube Hubby, and also Book Club VIP member Tom. Tom, say hello.
I did. Hello.
Um, we we're going to be talking about March's book. March's book, yes. Um, and that is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. But before we jump into that, I just want to let you guys know that if you ever want to join us on screen during the discussion, you can do that by checking out patreon.com/LibriLabra and becoming a book club VIP member. And there's quite a few different perks, like getting a custom bookmark and helping us pick what we're reading for the book club, and priority commenting in YouTube comments, and sometimes behind the scenes pictures and bloopers and stuff like that. So I was the one that selected this because I am probably one of the few people that have never read it. Or Tom, did you also say you hadn't read it, or you hadn't read
correct. I have not.
So. Okay. So I had never read it. My son had actually read it. And with all the book banning happening, it just seemed like an appropriate time to finally pick it up. And I've also had this goal of like trying to read 4 classics a year. And so that was why I selected it. Now, it's really short. I have like the 60th anniversary edition, which has a bunch of like essays and breakdowns and stuff at the end. I did not read that this time around, but I do plan on rereading the book and then going back and reading all those essays because I'm sure they're super interesting. Initial thoughts. Also, we'll be discussing initial thoughts and then jumping into spoiler territory. So if you haven't read it, go read it, come back. But
my initial thoughts, I was like, oh, I haven't read it before. I guess it's time to knock this out. But I ended up liking it more than I thought I would.
And you said you want to watch the movie now.
I do.
The newer movie.
It doesn't matter.
Any movie.
Okay. I'll consume all media.
All right, how about you, Tom?
Well, this is a novel that its reputation precedes itself because it's an acknowledged classic, science fiction classic. So, it's just one of the books I just never got quite around to reading. So it's like, well, I guess this is the time now. So here we are. So I'm glad we picked this one. So.
Yeah, same. I wasn't expecting to, like, I knew there was going to be feelings and thoughts and connections to like present day and stuff like that, but I wasn't expecting it to hit me as emotionally as it did. I was like in tears the first 30 pages, just totally messed up and crying like the whole time. So the story didn't actually go the way I was expecting it to go. And again, it's like super short. It was only like 158 pages, but definitely something that has a lot of great quotes. And, I want to go back and reread it and annotate it. And I feel like, as classics are, but I definitely think this is one that I want to revisit over and over again. So we can jump into spoilers now. I don't even know where to begin. What was the girl's name? Was it Clarissa?
Clarice, maybe?
No. Yes.
Okay.
Clarice?
I think it was Clarice.
Unless I'm channeling my Silence of the Lambs.
No, I thought about it every time her name was mentioned, so I think that's right.
I think it takes a while before he even finds out what her name is.
Young teenager, that guy, Montag.
Yeah, that basically. I wouldn't say.
Yeah, it is Clarice.
She was a bit of a catalyst, but not necessarily like the beginning point for him.
I thought she was. She was the first one to ask him.
What?
Are you happy?
Oh my god. But, and maybe I'm just not lining up the time properly, because I know he was talking to her for a while, like every day or whatever, but he had already been hiding books away for like a year in his house. So had he not started doing that before kind of meeting her and talking to her, or was it after? Like, was he talking to her for that long?
Good question.
Because that's why I say I don't think she was the start.
I had assumed that it began with what she had started, but it didn't really, maybe it wasn't specified how and when that panned out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she laid the seeds for him being receptive to doing that, but what got him doing it actually was when they went to burn that old lady's library and she decided to perish with the books.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he's like, what the hell are we even doing here now? So.
But then, because I don't remember seeing any dates in the book, so either I'm just getting things jumbled, or maybe they didn't really specify dates, because he had taken a book from that lady's house.
Right.
And then when he finally revealed to his wife that he had taken the book, then he was like, I've been taking books. Yeah, right. I have others. So like,
okay, then that's different. Okay.
Yeah, so he had like a whole stack that he had been sticking wherever, I don't know, I forget what it's called.
So then maybe it was Clarice that actually, said, hey, maybe we need to think of it differently about this. And that's what started it.
I think it's funny how she didn't really answer his questions, but she just made him think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was like, what do you guys talk about? She just chuckled and walked away.
I think something that I found interesting was that, I've watched, I feel like, a pretty decent amount of dystopian movies or even read dystopian books. And a lot of times they want to like numb or dull human emotion. And when they take things away, it's often everything. It's often all of the arts, because the arts inspire emotion. And so the fact that they zeroed in on books only, but they still had music and they still had movies and TV shows, and like that was kind of surprising to me.
Well, because they can control what goes on the screens versus they can't really control what's in the books.
Why not?
That's why they're burning them, right?
I mean, obviously you can't necessarily rewrite, like you can't take a book that exists and rewrite it, but you could just write a new book. I mean, they were rewriting history anyway. But I was still surprised. I was like, wait, they have TVs and movies and music and like all this other stuff. Like, I'm just, again, just surprised that they focused on just the books.
Well, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what's left is entertainment. So.
Yeah, but if I recall correctly, wasn't the professor like, what's the right one here? Media agnostic, in the sense that, it doesn't matter, books, films, whatever. They banned everything because they don't want anything approaching reality to ask like questions.
Right. They didn't want, they didn't want people asking questions. But they still had TVs that were like, they were watching.
Yes, but those were heavily edited, and you're getting the party line there, and that's okay, because they can indoctrinate you that way. They have to have something, and then that's what they chose. So.
There were some things in the book that I didn't understand, like I couldn't visualize. Like every time they made a reference to the salamander, I wasn't sure what the hell that was.
That was a symbol for the firemen, wasn't it?
I mean, it was really the firemen, so.
Yeah, but it was also the vehicle. It's like a fire truck, but actually that produces fire, doesn't put it out. It's like a mobile flamethrower. That's what I understood it to be.
Okay.
Oh.
And then there was the mechanical hound.
Right.
Which, is that just what it sounds like? Just like a mechanical
robot that was made to hunt people and subdue them.
And then the other thing I didn't understand was family, because family was constantly being put in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
What was that referencing?
I thought it was like the characters that were coming in on the TV in the parlor. It's like, well, you don't have real families anymore, so this is your family. Your TV family. That's what you're supposed to embrace. That's the way I took it.
Hmm. Interesting. And I guess the idea of, well, his wife had a conversation with him at one point where she was like, well, we have the third wall when we get the fourth wall. And I was like, what does that mean? Like they were talking about like having the third and fourth wall.
Of a structure or of,
I mean,
you talk
She
about
was-
like, the fourth wall of,
that's how I was reading it, like the way you were
No.
just about to describe it. But she was saying, she was asking him about money and saving up money to get a fourth wall.
Oh yeah. To put the screen on the fourth wall. That
Right.
way you complete. That's every wall has a TV screen.
Right. Which
They would-
which is breaking the fourth wall is ironic in that sense because
Right.
you're actually sealing yourself in.
I think the other thing that surprised me about the story, again, just because I was expecting it to fall in line with a few other dystopians, was I was really expecting that Millie was like ahead of him. She had already been checking out books and reading and doing all this other stuff.
Oh no.
And I
Okay.
guess because as I was reading it, the movie that I kept thinking of was Equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
No, I've not.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to blow out your point there, but
I didn't want to.
I failed. Yes,
You should definitely see it because it's a good movie.
I will.
I don't want to spoil it for you, so I won't continue on that thread.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate the way, apart from Clarice, the way the women were portrayed in this book is, those silly women, like the patronizing, well, probably still now, way that men looked at women. Oh, they're just discussing their silly things, and but so it was kind of unfortunate that he did it that way, but I can understand why he did, in a way. So.
But I mean, even as the characters interacted with each other, and
Mhm.
I know it was the point, but there was just such a lack of empathy in everything that they were saying. And what's funny is just recently, I think I was having a conversation with my son where, because I keep saying this all the time, I just think the world needs more empathy. I think our problem right now is that we lack empathy, and people have this habit of being like, well, that happened to them, not me. Why should I care? Or at least in the United States. And that idea was presented in the book when they were saying how like, oh, well, I've never known someone to have had that happen, or it's not me, or whatever the case was. And so that same idea was kind of carried out in the book, which is like sad. And they were on like their third marriage, and
Well, that was another reason why I thought family was in quotation marks, was because it's really everybody was just, I don't know how they described it at the beginning, but he was even like, is she even my wife? But I thought that was whether or not she threw him under the bus. So there's a lot of variables that I'm not sure I can put my finger on, but
I mean, that's part of the reason why I feel like it would be a good thing to reread anyway, just
Yeah.
to like kind of catch up on things that I missed the first time around. But the reason I thought that the wife was kind of ahead of him in her thinking was because I assumed that she had tried to unalive herself, and that was what happened when he found that empty bottle of pills and she had to have her stomach pumped
Right.
and everything else.
Mhm.
So, but then it was like after that happened, she was just a robot all over again.
yeah, why would they do a silly thing like that?
So
I wanted to know when they pumped her stomach, pumped the blood, and then left. Did he say they put a contraceptive in it?
I don't know what word they used, but it wasn't.
It wasn't that?
No, I don't think it was that.
I didn't think it was that. No.
I was like, for a second, I was like, that's messed up. For what reason? She's out. She's done. She's in a coma. But I don't know what word that was then. But I don't know where I was going. I'm sorry. That was ADHD brain fart.
But it sounded like, Guy and Mildred, were so disconnected from each other. It's like they're lonely in this marriage and they don't really know each other. Because clearly Millie's all about the TV, and so what kind of life is that? So that would explain why she goes to the sleeping pills, and then Guy is just, oh, I'm yay fire. We're gonna burn the books, and that's what he lives for. It's like, again, what kind of life is that? You live for destroying things. So.
I also didn't understand why they couldn't remember where or when they had met. Like, why was that just lost to the ether?
Maybe they've both been drugged or swapped.
See,
or...
and that goes with like my other comparisons, because I think with like the Giver, they're being drugged in some way, and also in Equilibrium they're being drugged in some way. So right. I think I was kind of expecting that to be the same thing. Like, but I guess maybe it's more just like the control of the TV and the music
psychologically.
And yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Part of the conditioning.
That.
So.
Don't need drugs.
But she was still taking some every day anyway. Yeah, the wife was. So I don't know. And then like, what was the deal with his captain? Beatty?
Yes.
Beatty. Was he just making shit up, or like did he really have all that information? Had he really read all those books? Like,
clearly the answer is yes, because he's like, rattling off quotes, and it's like, for being a fireman, you know a hell of a lot of stuff about the books you're burning.
Right. So, or was that just to demonstrate the hypocrisy?
Possibly, yes, and or the fact that you have to. I mean, you gotta know what's in him to fight him. Like, in order to have that spin, in order to be able to talk, oh, well, this just taught you something horrible that you don't need to, that's.
I'm gonna say no. No, especially when we're talking about like comparatively to the book banning that's happening right now, people are not reading those books. They are just saying, they're just being like porn.
Right.
They're not reading it.
Right.
They're not
the people, but the people in charge, I'm sure, are still reading the books to find out what's in them.
But that's why I'm like mentioning the hypocrisy, because that politicians who are out here trying to ban abortion may have had a mistress.
Well,
like, there's just so much hypocrisy. Or all the people like trying to put, anti-gay legislation in place, and then you find out that
they're just trying to hide it for themselves.
Right.
I'm going to go a different route and suggest that, Beatty was an intellectual, but, much like Mildred, he just found that he couldn't take it anymore, so he committed suicide. And like, Guy just burned him up. Because, when they had their ending scene together, Beatty and Monte, it's like, was it Bradbury makes a point of saying, he could have done X, Y, and Z, but he didn't to defend himself. He was just goading Guy on until finally he says, okay, flame on, and here we go. So that's what I gathered from it.
I mean, yeah, and Guy does say that he was like, he wanted to die.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
goes to show you that even though you have these ideas, they need to be shared, and you need that connection with people to share them. Much like we're doing now, talking about these things. So.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Because it's lonely to have so many questions and to not have someone to bounce them off and to find out what their perspective is, whether you disagree or not. Like, that exchange is important, and you can only do that through shared connection and respect, I feel like, versus and approaching things with curiosity versus judgment.
Right.
I'm surprised the story wasn't much longer than it
Yeah, it
actually
ended kind of
was.
abruptly, didn't it?
Well, it's kind of impressive how a small book like this can actually entice so much, And dude, there was a line in there about kids killing kids. When?
Mm-hmm.
How did he know that was going to be happening?
Yeah, that was one.
Well, that's what happens when people in society feel disconnected from one another. Life doesn't mean anything, so they're only
Oof.
it's only the possessor's life that matters. Everybody else, nothing.
So much meaning, a lot of impact.
I know that Clarice kind of becomes this ghost for him. But she was so interesting. She was so interesting. I wish she had been around longer. I wish she had asked more and said more. And I know she served her purpose, I guess, in just getting him to start asking questions. But I don't know, especially when he starts talking to Faber. Was that the guy's name?
Professor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the first things that they discuss is the idea of taking books and putting them in firemen's houses to
Mm-hmm.
frame the firemen. And I was like, whoa, is that what we're doing? And I really thought that's where the book was going to head, and that was the plan, and that's how they were going to execute the rest of it, but it didn't go like that at all.
Right.
I mean, some of it, I guess.
I think he did it to one person's house, one fireman's house.
Yeah, so one of them he knew, because he knew it was he knew him by name. It was one of his company. So.
But I'm not sure how I feel about how the story ended, where now he's just part of a bunch of roamers that are silently holding on to information till a time where they might be able to use it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also after they watched the city get bombarded, right?
Nuked. Right.
Wait, what?
Yeah. And it's the the last little part of it says, and the war was over just like that. But one guy was like, well, there's nothing left of the city. It looks like baking powder or baking soda or something like that.
Right.
I remember that.
I do remember the part about the war being over. I didn't recognize that
they had
bombed the city.
Taken the city. Oh, yeah.
Well, like with any such regimes, they always go out the intelligentsia first. And that's clearly what happened here, because that's was it Faber was talking to him about, oh yeah, there's professors and such from here, to the West Coast, and who are apparently just being homeless now. And this is what they were doing with their time, which I wish I could have seen that idea developed, but
right.
I didn't get that.
Now, is there really a war? Are they blaming things on war, or are they actually just using that as an excuse to actually bombard their own people so that they don't actually spread intelligence?
I didn't think that. But again, I didn't know that the city had gotten bombed. So but
I would say no, because it seems counterproductive to bomb people who are already under your sway. Unless you're going after a flea with an elephant gun, which is entirely possible.
But I mean, you just saw this thing happen with the firemen getting taken out, and so the higher ups might have been like, "Uh-oh, hang on."
if it was the one city, yes, but you got the impression
Oh,
that
you're
they
right.
took
You're
it
right.
all over.
You did get the impression that it was a bunch of cities that were taken.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go to can take that conspiracy the even deeper into it, but we won't.
Right.
Don't think about it.
I'm just thinking about how obviously the purpose of the book is just to inspire critical thinking. Yeah. But there was just so many threads in there that I was like connecting to current day events that was overwhelming. Like even the way they were talking about the news and the news line, because they had that whole thing going on where they were like doing this manhunt trying to find Guy. And then, as it's happening, they were like, oh, well, they lost you. So they're going to have to make it up. They're going to have to pretend.
Turns out they didn't need to find them after all.
And I was like, what?
Right.
Like, and so just thinking about, certain
that
news networks that are spinning and revising current events and completely telling them in a different way, and just like
right.
I'm looking for a quote from the book, but the page I'm on is like the new Goodreads thing, and for life of me, I cannot find out where the notes live now, like the highlights.
What was it of?
It was the one where I know I get what he's saying, but I was saying, well, it was a quote about how people being uncomfortable with books, and how like black people are uncomfortable with Little Black Sambo, and white people are uncomfortable with Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is not the same thing at all.
It's not the same thing, but also like just the idea of what he was conveying was just that everyone's discomfort led to and that's literally what's happening right now.
Oh yeah.
Like white people don't want to be reminded of the United States like history of racism, or the fact that systemic racism still exists, and like can't deal with that discomfort. So let's get rid of all the books. Let's get rid of the diversity courses. Let's get rid of like it's just so much.
Yes. Well, also too, there's the recent move to take out offending language from books too. Roald Dahl, and who's the other one? I can't remember the authors offhand, but I don't know. To me, you should preserve the integrity of the artist's work, and let's say, hey, just so you know, this is it has this in it, and just so you're aware that it's like a trigger warning almost. Say or have an explanation as to why it was written that way or whatever. But to me, the original artwork should be preserved, regardless of what it is. So,
yeah, I think the warning is good because I don't know. I know we've read a few things that some of the language was jarring just because of how old it was, and I think The Roaches Have No King comes to mind.
Oh wow, that's okay. Oh, okay. Had access to long-term memory for that one.
But I have not read it or The Stand. I can't remember which one it was by Stephen King, but I've seen reviews just talking about how much racist language is in it.
And there's one. What the hell was? Oh, it was Shazam. There was like a supposedly they were going to put out like a deluxe edition of like the first X number of issues of Shazam, and it got pulled because of the racist content. And looking at the panels, like holy shit, yeah, I can see why they pulled it. But by the it's like you don't want to be celebrating that, but by the same token, that's the artwork that was as it was created. I mean, is it flawed? Yes, but I'm not paying. Let people decide.
I mean, not just that, but by cleaning it up, you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
erasing the acknowledgement of that history.
Exactly.
But I agree, like
Whitewashing
it
it. In other
shouldn't
words, yeah.
necessarily, but right, it shouldn't necessarily be
Instead of
celebrated, but it's still like evidence of a history that existed.
instead of cleaning it up, teaching people about it, teaching
Mm-hmm.
people why it was, oh, this, we screwed up. This wasn't cool, but hey, now we're here. So I don't know, man.
And granted, all the things I can think of are. It's easy to say this because yeah, it's all white dudes almost invariably making up this racist shit about everybody else. So yeah, well that's But if it was the reverse, I don't know how I would take it. You know what I mean? Now I would have to think that yeah, well that's the way it was written. I mean, it may be hateful, maybe this, maybe that, but that's the original artifact. Again, for historical purposes, if nothing else.
I'm sure there's some sort of media that's hating on us pretty hard.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm just not familiar with it. Yeah, which is probably just as well. Watch, will get all kind of comments and so.
Even though the book wasn't necessarily separated into two parts, it kind of felt like it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like the second half of the book was so different than the first half. Like, Guy was having this awakening, and it sounded like he had a plan, and he was going to do something, and it felt like he was going to fight the system, and then
the system happened.
And then it was like, then he just went into hiding, met a whole bunch of people who were also hiding, and it seemed like the purpose of all those intellectuals was to just drop a whole bunch of really awesome quotes. and and then it's like, okay, so they're living in silent protest, and then that's it. I don't know, that's not the ending that I wanted. That's not the ending that like I felt like the book was building up to.
We don't know the ending yet.
I don't remember who said it. Like, I don't remember if it was one of the people that he met when he was like by the river and stuff that said it, or if it was Faber. But it was a really good quote, just talking about how you can't make people change their minds. Mm-hmm. But it was also entwined with like this idea of they have to wake up after the fact, like after everything is gone, after it's too late. Like, because he talks about his own experience and how he was upset, but he didn't fight anything. So his neutrality led to the outcome that everyone was experiencing. And he was talking about his guilt and regret of that. So like the idea that so many people are not going to want to do anything until after it's
too late, right?
And I don't know if like John has been tired of hearing me, but every day I'm like, we can't just sit by and do nothing. We have to do something. Like there's this history is happening, and like we can't just sit here and do nothing while this is all happening.
But you still have your little library, right?
I've always wanted my little free library. I do not. I never got to the point. No, I never got to that.
I'm sitting back here full of other stuff and books.
Talk about that pretty regularly too.
Well, what you said, Desiree, I was like, I would have been so happy if you had gone in the direction I think you were going to go, because I had read a book which essentially says this. It's The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is an excellent novel. If you haven't read it, please do. But he says that you can't change people's minds with facts. You need to tell them a good story. Mm-hmm. And now, bridging that to Fahrenheit 451, they took all the stories away. Mm-hmm. So how they can't change people's minds now.
And that, of course, makes me think of like Simon Sinek's book about storytelling and starting with why, mm-hmm. and how we make our decisions based in a part of our brain that's not responsible for communication. Mm-hmm. that it's like the feeling part of our brain where we experience emotion and stuff like that, where we so we make decisions based on those emotions and those gut feelings, and it's not tied back to logic, it's not tied back to facts and evidence and stuff like that.
Well,
And
that
that's
sucks.
why, yeah, I mean, like that, why do you think things like Fox News make such an impact? Because they're feeding on people's fears and like anger, and that's all emotional, and people are making decisions based on that emotion, not like, cross-referencing whether things are accurate or true.
Gotcha.
Because in the end, you could present them with that information and it still wouldn't matter because they're still making decisions based on those emotions.
Correct.
I will save a political note for after the cast. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was like, oh, he's going to say something, and then when I started, but one of the things I had the impression that it's like, I'm not sure he knew how to end this book. So he says, I know, we'll drop bombs, and then we'll let it go. So because it's kind of abrupt to me, but I don't know anything about the genesis of the story. So
it didn't just feel abrupt; it also felt anticlimactic.
Yeah.
So
we're not worried about the books anymore.
Like, yeah, they're just accepting that they're like memorizing stories and throwing out the physical book for one future date where they can get back to writing them, I guess. But and I think this is why I regret not having read all these other pages that were like dissecting and analyzing it, because
yeah, but for something like this, I think you don't want to, because then if you did that, then they would be voicing their opinion and maybe not yours. See what I mean? So
now we go back and discuss.
Right.
But I didn't know that was there because I listened to the book on audio and
it
was
ends,
just like,
yeah.
Audible hopes you enjoyed this
program.
I mean, maybe the way the story ended was like a way of being like, okay, well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do in this society? Like allowing space for us to figure it out.
I think everybody needs to sit and have a good read of this right now. 70 years ago.
And to that point, as I was reading this, it says, especially toward the end, this reminds me of a book that I read, God, years ago. It's another old school science fiction classic called The Canticle for Leibowitz. And, I actually went to see, okay, when were these written? Because actually, Bradbury's story was written like in the 53, and then I think it was Miller's book, Canticle for Leibowitz, came out in 59. But it's just like it deals with a similar theme. Not of the books, but the other stuff. So. And given that they were heading into the 60s, it's not hard not to see why. Because, the Cold War and everything else. And everybody had nukes. Well, Russia and the United States at least had nukes. And they were, oh, yeah, we're totally going to use them. It's like, well, no. So.
I'm actually a little surprised by the mention of divorce in the book. Because weren't like women not allowed to divorce for like a really long time? And like, I know the divorce rate has increased over the years, but like in the 50s and the 60s, like people were staying together. Women were staying with terrible men, and like just because they had no way out. And so the fact that multiple characters in the book were like on their second and third divorce was a little strange.
I think Ray Bradbury spent a lot of time looking forward.
That's most science fiction, the good ones at least too. The good science fiction novels.
And it definitely mentioned 2022. And I was like, that was the future for them and the
Yeah.
past for us. And like,
Yeah.
So that was weird. That shook me up a little bit, getting to see that year written down in the book.
What is the idea of what's supposed to have been happening at that point versus what's actually happening
Right.
now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but
Let's
how
go back
far
and
are
watch the
we?
Jetsons.
Like, we're not. If they're over here burning books and we're over here banning books, like how we're there? Like, it's pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And changing books because you don't like what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So. Which is unfortunate.
There was also like a lot of mention of the Bible, and I don't think I'm gonna have like a full grasp on what he was trying to say with that throughout the book until like I reread it and like highlight some things. But I think something that was challenging was knowing that they had rewritten certain aspects of history, right? Like they said that Benjamin Franklin was the first fireman, the first person to be burning books, which I was like, wow, like that's who you're. I don't know. That was just that was jarring.
Because I think in actual history, he was the one who first established the first fire company in America. So that's why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But then there was like another line because the lady said something like right before they lit the whole house on fire with her in it.
Mm-hmm.
Something about, I don't know, it was a quote. And then like he repeated it to Beatty, and Beatty was like, oh yeah, like so and so was burned at the
yes, when they were burned for heresy, yes.
Mm-hmm. So
that reminded me of Good Omens, but again, I can't say why without spoiling it.
So, I was trying to like cross-reference things as I was reading it. I was like, wait, did that really happen? Was that really said? Is that a real quote? Like, is he just making this up? Is he rewriting history again? So like, I was doing a bit of dancing with Google while I was reading.
Yeah, not to the same extent that, which I love the novel, Colson Whitehead's book, The Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he does fiddle with history in a way that it makes you wonder. It's like, okay, was this actually true or not? So.
I wish I had like highlighted even like some quotes.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
I did, but like I said, for some reason I cannot find the highlight section on Goodreads. Yeah, because normally, like on the old sheet, I would know where it was, but not on this new one. So.
Where does this take place?
Chicago, I think.
They met in Chicago.
Yeah, he says that they met in Chicago, but I know they talk about like subways and trains, so I wasn't sure if it was like.
So just somewhere in Illinois, maybe.
Yeah, but Chicago would be the target in Illinois. So that would be the most primary, I would think.
But I don't think
if you're going to do something in there, that's what you would hit.
I don't think Chicago has a subway. The subway's underground, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they have like elevated trains
system.
and they have like stuff above ground, and they also don't have a very intricate system. I think there's like 4 colors, 4 lines. I remember moving to Chicago and having to get on the train for something, and I was like, how do you guys get anywhere? And Jeff was like, what do you mean? There's 4 trains. I was like, but do they intersect? Do they overlap? Like, how do you get, like, coming from a New York subway system, it was just like, how do these 4 colors do anything?
Just showing Chicago has a subway.
Oh my God.
And where are the notes here? I can't even find them on the app. Damn it. Oh, here they are. Well, here's one quote: "There are too many of us," he thought. "There are billions of us, and that's too many. Nobody knows anyone. Strangers come and violate you. Strangers come and cut your heart out. Strangers come and take your blood. Good God, who were those men? I never saw them before in my life."
Talking about the two operators instead of medical doctors that came to transfuse her blood.
Yeah.
They were just
Plumbers,
an operator.
essentially, yeah.
Yeah,
Roto-rooter, really.
rather
what they were.
than medical professions.
Faber was an awesome character. I feel like he kind of just like picked up where Clarice left off, kind of. But wasn't enough of a voice of reason for Guy not to let his rage get the best of him when he started like reading poetry to that group of women.
Mm-hmm. Actually, thinking of Professor Faber, in my head canon, I know it's like 99.999% not true, but I'm going to say it is for V. I think the college in Animal House was named Faber College, so I'm going to say that that's who it's named after, even though I have no basis whatsoever for doing so.
Right. I mean, you never know.
Stranger Things.
We'll get to the bottom of it.
But I think one of my favorite quotes. I have an extended quote here, but it says, "And when he died, I suddenly realized I wasn't crying for him at all, but for all the things he did. I cried because he would never do them again. He would never carve another piece of wood, or help us raise doves and pigeons in the backyard, or play the violin the way he did, or tell us jokes the way he did. He was part of us, and when he died, all the actions stopped dead, and there was no one to do them just the way he did."
I enjoyed that too.
So,
I mean, and that's what we should be doing. We should be honoring like the beauty and uniqueness in each other versus like people trying to just other people.
I think it's shortly after that. This is almost right at the end of the book. This is likely a continuation of the other quote. "Everyone must leave something behind when he dies. My grandfather said, a child, or a book, or a painting, or a house, or a wall built, or a pair of shoes made, or a garden planted. Something your hand touched some way, so your soul has somewhere to go when you die. And when people look at that tree or that flower you planted, you're there. It doesn't matter what you do," he said, "as long as you change something from the way it was before you touched it into something that's like you after you take your hands away. The difference between the man who just cuts lawn and a real gardener is the touching," he said. "The lawn cutter might just as well not have been there at all. The gardener will be there a lifetime."
Yeah, that was pretty. I think there was a little bit more to that too, like
Yeah.
that shows a little bit of his grandfather's personality.
Mm-hmm. So,
Do you know how many adaptations of this there are?
I do not.
Okay.
I will say I recently found out that there was a graphic novel adaptation of it, which is available on Amazon. I haven't picked it up yet, but you know. And I guess the question, going back to the first discussion, was, I know that Will Smith did something for HBO. Was that a series or was that a TV show?
I didn't think it was Will Smith.
No idea.
No? Okay.
I think Michael B. Jordan
Okay, I
Was in some, and now I don't know if it was a show or if it was a movie. I'd have to look it up. But that was the one that I had in my head. Hopefully, it would be good if it was a miniseries. I've been liking that they're adapting things into miniseries now versus just cramming it into a movie. I feel like they're turning out a lot better.
It is Michael B. Jordan, yes.
Okay. I think I'm on the page where that quote you just pulled from.
Yeah, it's like right at the end of the book almost.
But like the other thing that made me laugh was like, grandfather's been dead for all these years, but if you lifted my skull by God in the convolutions of my brain, you'd find the big ridges of his thumbprint. He touched me. As I said earlier, he was a sculptor. I hate a Roman named status quo, he said to me. Stuff your eyes
with that was good.
Stuff your eyes with wonder, he said. Live as if you dropped dead in 10 seconds. See the world. It's more fantastic than any dream made or paid for in factories. Ask for no guarantees. Ask for no security. There never was such an animal. And if there were, it would be related to the great sloth, which hangs upside down in a tree all day, sleeping its life away. To hell with that, he said. Shake the tree and knock the great sloth down on his ass.
Mm-hmm. And literature has its fair share of people who only live in books. And I'm sure we know people like that too. That's how they access life. That's their only access to life is by books.
Yeah, there were a couple of spots in the story where I think it was Beatty just kept saying, "They're not even real. They're not, like the people in the books aren't even real. Like, what are they willing to die over that for?"
Right.
And man, the amount of like fictional characters I have cried over or fallen in love with, or like the fact that there are people that can't relate to that is sad. To that experience.
Yeah, when I read that part, I immediately thought of Hamlet. Where Hamlet puts on the play which basically reenacts Claudius's crime, and like the play is the thing that catches the conscience, or to catch the conscience of the king. And so, how does literature not affect? When you see something like that, it's like, hey. But yeah, you have to be a receptive reader, but not so receptive that that's your only source of knowledge, I guess. So, because I remember, I think it was Frederick Backlund, but I'm not sure, that said, if you think one book has all the answers, you're not reading enough books.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, that was something else that Beatty said. He said something about, I don't know what the direct quote was, but it was essentially like, why do you care about all of these books? None of them align anyway. Like, none of them hold the same truth, I think, is what he was saying. Like, that was the idea of what he was trying to get across, which is like, if the books all said the same shit, like, well, what's the point of that? Like,
that's what he's asking.
I know, but I know that his point was to be like, every book should tell the same story. It should be exactly the same. Like what's the other word I'm looking for? Conformity. Like that was what they wanted in their society. They wanted conformity. They wanted everybody to be the same.
Sure.
It's the same thing, doing all the same things, not deviating from thought, not like, so yeah, definitely didn't expect this book to make me cry. Though, I mean, I don't know if I am left with more to think about than I've already been thinking about lately, but it still feels worth a reread.
Are we going towards final thoughts?
I think so. Unless you have something else to add, Tom.
No, I'm good.
Well, since you mentioned it, what are your final
It,
thoughts?
it seemed like we just kind of hit a lull, so I was just wondering to find
Yes.
out. It gave me too much to think about. I gave it 4 stars. It'll get a 5 when I reread it, I'm sure.
Okay.
It's good, definitely a good book.
Mhm.
I think I would give it a 5.
You're already giving it a 5?
Dude, I would like literally all first 30 pages, like I was in tears. Like I'm not talking about like I shed a little tear. Like I had to keep wiping,
Yeah.
I had tissues on the bed. Like I was a mess.
Ugly crying and everything.
So like yeah. To the point where I had to get on Instagram and say something because I was like, I what is happening right now? So yeah, and you know, I don't reread often. So the fact that I want to, and I want to annotate, and I want to just kind of like turn it inside out and all different
It
directions.
deserves a 5
like,
then.
yeah, that I feel like it deserves a 5.
Don't break its spine.
I will say though that because it's a classic and because it's so old, I thought it was going to be a little bit more challenging to read. Not that I wanted it to be, but I thought it was going to be, and I'm glad that it wasn't. I'm glad that it was like in relatively plain language and not like reading Pride and Prejudice or whatever, you know, like I'm just, I'm glad that the story was easily digestible. So it gets a 5 for me for all those things.
But with that, it's also very well written. I think it's not. I mean, the prose itself isn't like highfalutin or anything, but like the quotes we just shared, yeah, it does get ideas across, and in pretty plain language, which is good. So, I think when I started this book, it was a 5, but then as we get into the book, it's like okay, maybe 4.5, 4, and then it's like, and just the abrupt ending is like, wait, oh, that's it, So I ended up with a 3.5, rounded up to a 4. But if I, went back, it's gonna be like, okay, yeah, I get more of it now, and I would like to increase the rating. So, but as of right now, at this point, that's what I give it, 3.5.
Okay, cool. And I thought you were joking with me when you said Jeff was yelling at me. But then Jeff says that yes, Chicago does have a subway. Okay, my bad. That's funny. I didn't know he actually.
I'm glad we established that.
Yeah. So next month, and I don't have it in hand right now because I've ordered it and it's on its way. But next month we're reading the graphic novel Tetris.
The Games People Play.
Tetris, The Games People Play by Box Brown. So that is our April book.
It doesn't sound like it would be interesting, but the way it's written and the way it's illustrated, it's like, oh my God. I couldn't put it down.
I think it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like the Tetris story is pretty interesting in and of itself, and I know they just created a series.
But the way he bends the title or the story into the title and vice versa, it's really good. So.
All right, cool. I'm looking forward to checking that out. So that's our April book. Yes. And because it's a graphic novel, it'll be shorter. We can start that we can have the discussion for that relatively soon after I get the book, hopefully, since you've already read it. And then maybe next month we can catch up. Yeah. We'll have something at the beginning and something at the end, and then we should be caught up with our books and our discussions.
Yeah, I guess so. We got Assassin's Quest right after that, right? Is that true?
Yeah, June. Yeah.
And we're gonna trip again. Oops.
Well, I've already started kind of listening to that, so I'm trying to ease into it so I don't have to rush.
Yeah, I want to add to what I told you on the chat after we get done here.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, if you have joined us and you have gotten this far, thank you for being here. Hope you'll join us next month when we talk about Tetris, the games people play. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon and see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.